Oh hey guys, welcome to Nusa Penida. This is kind of a tiny island off the coast of the big Bali island. Me and my friend Marlene, who is behind my shoulder working on her laptop, we've come away for a girls' weekend to Nusa Penida just for some sea, sun, sand and just general relaxing really, because it's my 1 year of being in Bali and I did not expect to be here still after 1 year, but I am. It is a very nice kind of satisfying feeling to look back at the year and think, wow, it's a year well spent. Whilst I've travelled around a lot in life, I've been to over 50 countries. I spent the bulk of my 20s travelling around. It's nice to kind of feel very rooted and feel very calm and sort of mellow out in my old age. I am slowly heading towards my 30s. It's kind of on the horizon in the distance sort of thing, big 30. I'm making it sound like it's like in a couple of months, like it's years away. But it's been nice to kind of be in my later 20s and have the stability for a year and enjoy where I'm living and have the financial security, living in a place that's very cheap to live. And yeah, just enjoying my life choices, which is always good to know that, you look back and think, yeah, that was a year well spent and a good decision, and I'm happy, and all of those lovely things. So we're here contemplating all of that, and yeah, so I am doing a reading vlog this weekend. I am reading 2 anticipated releases. One is Yellowface by R F Kuang, and one is David Diop's new novel, which is released in September, but I have an e-arc, an advanced reader copy of it. So I shall be reading that this weekend and letting you know my thoughts as well. I'll give you my thoughts on both books so far, because I've gotten to about a third of the way through both of them. And so I think the one that surprised me the most is Yellowface by R F Kuang, which I was not expecting to enjoy as much as I actually have enjoyed it. I have read The Poppy War before, but I have not read Babel, although I am planning on reading Babel because I do enjoy dark academia. So R F Kuang is a bit of a, I would say, overhyped TikTok author, mainly because of Babel. She is, I think everybody knows who R F Kuang is. And so I didn't have massive expectations going into Yellowface, but she has pleasantly surprised me. She normally does genre fiction, Poppy War being a fantasy novel, and this is more of your kind of, I guess it's definitely satire, and that's one of the reasons that I'm really enjoying it, because she's taking very serious, inflammatory really, topics of conversation and basically mocking them, and I am loving it. R F Kuang is not holding back at all. She's tearing down Twitter and Twitter users. She's tearing down the publishing industry. She's tearing down people who think their own voices have the monopoly on any story from their country or ethnicity. She's tearing down woke culture and cancel culture, and it is very refreshing, and I'm here for it. I'm finding it very amusing. I'll read you out an excerpt that I think beautifully illustrates that. Just to put the passage that I'm going to read into context, the publishing house, for example, changes this white woman's name to something that sounds more ethnic. I mean, that just sounds so cringy to say out loud. Which is why Kuang is basically mocking it as hard as she does, but they literally change her name so that it can be kind of implied that she may have Asian heritage. And then things like random strangers, like constantly probing, like not asking overtly, are you Chinese, but going, so where are you from? And then when she gives the wrong answer and she says, like, I'm from, I don't know, Oklahoma, they're like, so where are your parents from? And it's like people are constantly like strangers, like wanting to know, okay, where are you from? Like, what gives you the right to write this story? And when she says to them, I'm white, and she screams in their face, like, I'm white, and they're like, oh, we just assumed you were, Asian because you wrote a book about, Asian history. And it's that sort of thing. And then when the publishing house forces her to have a sensitivity reader because she's white, and she's sort of saying, no, I don't want a sensitivity reader, like, I've done the research, I'm not a moron, and I'm not a heartless bitch, like I can handle things sensitively with respect and dignity without needing a sensitivity reader to tell me if I've done a good job or not. And the publishing house is like, no, we're going to give you a sensitivity reader, because they're like in fear of putting a step out of line and then being hounded on Twitter and being cancelled on Twitter. So this is everything that R F Kuang is exploring in this book, basically in the first third that I've read, and it is very inflammatory. Like, I'm sure even me recounting this to you now, some people are going to be very offended by even, I guess, the topics that I'm kind of talking about. So everything that I've mentioned, it has taken place in the first third of the book, and it will potentially rub you up the wrong way. I kind of enjoyed the humour and the mocking, and because I read very serious books, and so it's nice to take a break, and it was very refreshing for me just as a reader to just read something different. Because I am not on Twitter, I am not really on social media apart from BookTube, I'm not on TikTok. I very much distance myself from anything like that, because I find the whole thing disturbing and negative. So all of the discord around what she's talking about, I have some awareness of, but not really. Like, I'm not involved with it at all. So for me, it's just fun to listen to Kuang like inform me about the absurdity that seems to be going on at the moment. But I shall read you the extract so you can see for yourself what I'm talking about. Okay, are you ready? I've got my Kindle here. There's a Q&A going on at a press conference, basically, for this author's new book. And it says here, one of the questions is, I wanted to ask you, why do you think it's okay for a white author to write and profit from this kind of story? Why do you think you're the right person to tell it? And the author, we're now getting her internal monologue, which says, no doubt she thinks this is some grand public call out. This is the first time I've ever heard this objection. No doubt everyone's riveted, glancing between her and me as if expecting us to go to blows. But I've prepared this answer. I've been preparing this answer ever since I started writing the book. And this is what she says. I think it's very dangerous to start censoring what authors should and shouldn't write. I open strong, and this gets some approving murmurs from the crowd. But I still see some skeptical faces, especially from other Asians present. So I continue. I'd hate to live in a world where we tell people what they should and shouldn't write based on the colour of their skin. I mean, turn what you're saying around and see how it sounds. Can a black writer not write a novel about a white protagonist? What about everyone who has written a World War II book but never lived through it? You can critique a work on the grounds of literary quality and its representations of history, sure. But I see no reason why I shouldn't tackle this subject if I'm willing to do the work. And as you can tell by the text, I did do the work. You can look at my bibliographies. You can do the fact-checking yourself. Meanwhile, I think writing is fundamentally an exercise in empathy. Reading lets us live in someone else's shoes. Literature builds bridges. It makes our world larger, not smaller. And as for the question of profit, I mean, should every writer who writes about dark things feel guilty about it? Should creatives not be paid for their work? So I think it's a really, really important conversation. I know it's kind of light-hearted and humorous and satirical, but it really is saying things that must be said. Somebody needs to be brave enough to say it, because you know, there is this fear of being cancelled, and I think we're kind of seeing the back end of that. I feel like, you know, fortunately that is kind of dying down and people are seeing it for what it is, and the fact that you can't just cancel people because they don't agree with you. You know, you have to have two sides of an argument, otherwise we're getting into like dystopian levels of reality, where there's not two sides to an argument, there's just one thing that everyone believes. I mean, that's not how society works, and it never has, thank God. So yeah, it doesn't mean you have to agree with everybody, but you at least have to hear both sides of the argument before forming your own opinion, and that's the whole thing. You form your own opinion based on two sides of an argument. So yeah, I think it's really, really important, and I look forward to reading the rest of it. Good morning, everybody. As you can see, I've got my first vlogging injury because the camera / tripod fell on my face yesterday. So that's what that is. I thought I'd come this morning and talk to you about how far I am through David Diop's novel. I'm about 50% of the way through, and I am enjoying the writing. David Diop's writing, I feel, is pretty strong, but the plot unfortunately doesn't feel as strong as At Night All Blood is Black. I haven't really been able to get a hold on the plot. It almost feels like a rope when you're gripping the rope and it just slips through your hands, and then you kind of grasp again for it and try and hold on, and it kind of goes through your hands again. So just when I think I have a handle on the plot, I just sort of lose it again and then try and pick it back up, because it is worth it for the writing, but it just has been fairly frustrating. What's happened so far is that a young woman whose father has died, she has found his old journals that describe his journey through Senegal as a younger man, and his fascination around the disappearance of a young woman called Maram. And by the 50% mark, we've met Maram, or rather he's met Maram, and she's told him a version of events leading up to her disappearance that are very, very different to the ones her uncle describes. I won't tell you kind of what the differences are because that'll be spoilers. It's also making me smile because inadvertently the two novels that I'm reading at the moment are both talking to each other around that kind of wokeist thing of own voices. So, because obviously David Diop is a black author and he is writing a white protagonist, and it's making me think about the sort of Twitter users that R F Kuang is kind of mocking, and how the Twitter users would be up in arms going, oh, he's not an own voice writer, did he get a sensitivity reader for that? The kind of crossover there is amusing. But so for the rest of the day then, I think we're going to go have a swim in the sea and get a coffee as always, and I have some editing to do later for my Kazuo Ishiguro video, and then I think that'll be me done. I will endeavour to finish, if not almost finish, both novels today, because tomorrow we head back to Ubud.
Low key, keep it softly spoken, with no strings tying you to me. I'm happy in your company with no emotion, 'cause my love deserves to be free. I never wanna look at a house in the garden, I never wanna lock you down. I know you're not mine, it's just my turn, but we can still have fun for now. Told me you don't really do commitment, trust me, consider your message received. When you said you couldn't take us too seriously, I must admit I was relieved, 'cause I never wanna play happy families with you, but I like having you around. I'm fully aware this is a flash in the pan, but we can still have fun for now. Stop paying so much attention, and when you're moving in another direction, don't worry, I get it. I meant what I said when I said it, lady. I never wanna look.
Hi guys, so it's our last morning in Nusa Penida, which is the tiny island off the coast of Bali. We head back on the ferry today back to Ubud. So now that I have finished both Yellowface and David Diop's new novel, The Door of No Return, I thought I'd give you my final thoughts on both of them. One of them was an absolute 4-star fantastic, light-hearted, entertaining, satirical, funny read, and it sustained that throughout, and that was of course Yellowface. And the other one was a flop, so disappointing. Especially after how much I loved At Night All Blood Is Black, I kind of was looking at myself thinking, what happened? Like, how did he go from, there are coconuts, by the way, falling on the roof, that's the loud bangs that you may be hearing. And so I thought, what happened? You know, this author had so much promise. He won the International Booker, and this is his next novel? What? There was almost no character development, there was some plot, but nothing interesting, and I just found the whole thing quite bizarre, so I gave it 2 stars in the end, because the writing is still David Diop, so it's still very well written, but I just couldn't understand why this had been published. So I feel like maybe he was under pressure to produce another manuscript after winning the International Booker, and so we just sort of pumped this out before it was ready, because that's definitely how it feels. It feels unfinished, it feels like he didn't have enough time to actually fully flesh out his characters and his plot and just developing everything to a readable standard, you know, and so this was a shock, to say the least, that it was that bad. I'm really disappointed, and whether I will read another Diop is yet to be seen, but going on to a more cheery note, I absolutely adored Yellowface. I read a lot of literary fiction, and so it was nice to just have a break from that, and it was very much a beach read. It was a bitch fest at times, in terms of you're just, you have kind of like the Twitter bullies, I guess, the Twitter hypocrites, you know, who say they're anti-bullying and then like hound people with death threats and threats of sexual violence and stalking and all this sort of thing. So you have them, and then in one side, and then you have on the other side June Hayward, who is the writer that we follow, and her publishing house, and the publishing house just saying to her, keep quiet, don't respond, don't retaliate, don't do anything, silence. And I mean, at least that is good. Another coconut. At least that is good publicity advice, because I just thought immediately straight back to the Harry and Meghan versus the royal family debacle, where, you know, Harry and Meghan were screaming it from the rooftops to whoever cared to listen, and the royal family just remained silent throughout. And, you know, whose ratings are the lowest, whose popularity ratings are the lowest they've ever been? Harry and Meghan's, not the royal family, you know, so you have to be the side that keeps quiet, basically. So at least she was getting good publicist advice, because June Hayward just didn't respond, and I was willing her to, because she looked like she was going to crack at so many different points, thinking, do not respond, don't retaliate, don't say anything, silence, because the Twitter warriors they'll get bored, you know, next week they'll be onto somebody else, hounding somebody else, like, they will leave you alone, just shut up, don't say anything. Yeah, so I'm not going to tell you what happened in the second half, so everything I've told you has happened in the first half. I feel like, you know, you'll want to read this for yourself. It's certainly an entertaining, light-hearted, funny read. I was laughing at times, and as I say, a nice palate cleanser from the stuff that I normally read. So I'll just quote from the novel here in regards to the whole keeping quiet thing. It says, Athena did the smart thing, which was to deactivate her Twitter and say nothing until the internet found something else to invest their prurient fascination disguised as care. She's also taking down the publishing industry, woke culture, and the fact that the publishing industry feels like it's forced to pander to the woke culture driven by the Twitter heads, and it's kind of like the whole thing is just some warped, horrible cycle. And R F Kuang, I think, is basically sick of all of it, and kudos to the publishing house that did publish this. I think it was HarperCollins, so it is one of the top 5 publishing houses in the world. You have an author who is essentially despises you and what you are doing in the name of this woke culture that prioritises, you know, how many boxes you can tick over great writing. And I think R F Kuang, along with a lot of other people, are showing their that they're fed up with this and that they want change and that this isn't how it should be. This woke culture gone too far, allowed too much free rein, and is basically dictating to the publishing industry what can and can't be published and who can and can't speak. And yes, it's very powerful, whilst also obviously the overriding thing is humour, and it's very much satire, but it does have important things to say, and clearly R F Kuang is very passionate about this. Her fury comes across. Yeah, it's a great read. So 1 4-star, 1 2-star, not bad for a weekend. As you've seen, we've spent most of the time drinking coffee, doing yoga, spending a lot of time sitting reading by the beach, going in the sea, just having a very chilled weekend really. We've tried some great beach clubs, we've tried some bad beach clubs, so we feel like we've had a very good overall time here. So with that, my coffee has just arrived, so I shall wrap up the video here. Thank you very much for watching this vlog. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will look forward to chatting to you all down in the comments below. Bye guys!